2, 3.
Hello, experienced designers, EXDers, creatives everywhere. Hope you're enjoying your day, and I want to say thank you for making this part of it. Hope you are doing well, and I hope you're as excited about this show as I am to bring it to you. I do think it is part of getting older, now that I am getting older, that you start to think of your past not as a singular life, but a series of lives that have culminated into wherever you are at the moment. This passage of time allows for that perspective. But I suppose a 5-year-old is going to think in similar terms of where did the time go? It seems like only yesterday I was just 4 years old, which, in fact, the person was, it is technically true, it was just probably yesterday. Regardless of our age, we all go through episodes and identities and phases, which can involve, especially in high school, different outfits and hats and accessories. We go through changes throughout our lives, and that can be a fun ride. Perhaps, in a sense, reincarnation isn't just about coming back from a previous life in a literal sense, but how we evolve in this one. Constantly being reincarnated into different lives based on where we're at in our life. In one of my past lives, I worked at a place called United Way Community Services in Detroit. For those not familiar, United Way serves as a kind of conduit to disseminate funds to partners' social service agencies. So you give money often through your workplace contributions, and United Way gives that money back out to organizations in your area doing good work. In United Way, I was doing research in the Research and Data Services Division. It was a really good way to be introduced to the world of social services and nonprofits, developing a deep appreciation for their work and the challenges associated with their work. The degree to which it is challenging is proportionate to how vital it is. Very challenging and very important. In the land of profit margins and mass consumption, social services and nonprofits are often misunderstood and ignored, except by those who need their work. My guest today in Experience by Design describes herself as a pissed off optimist, which I think we all should be. A little pissed off, but optimistic. You have to be both to do the work that she does at Greater Good Studios. Sara Cantor went to graduate school for human-centered design, then applied her skills and passion in retail spaces. She further worked with major corporations, which left her wanting to do more and have a greater impact. This led her to co-found Greater Good Studio, which is a design firm dedicated to the social sector. Rather than moving product, their goal is to build, quote, a more equitable society through work that is, quote, more inclusive, innovative, and impactful. We talk about her journey to the work that speaks her passion today, this work she does with Greater Good Studio. She recalls transitioning from engineering into design. She describes her work in projects like creating marketing materials for maternal and infant mortality prevention programs. She talks about the importance of involving those directly impacted by social services into design and decision-making processes. And this has been a long-running theme in Experience by Design. The fact that we need to include people who are receiving these services rather than designing at them. We need to design with them. She shares her experience working to develop initiatives aimed at increasing homeownership for families that were traditionally locked out of homeownership, often intentionally designing against people to own homes. We also discuss designers as social justice catalysts, addressing social injustice, channeling anger productively, and motivating positive change. And this is why she is a pissed off optimist. On the one hand, there's a lot to be angry about and a lot that needs to change. On the other hand, she knows that through doing good work and good design, we can make a difference. I have to say that this is a very motivational conversation about what can be accomplished through good design and especially inclusive design. Hope you enjoy it. So one of the things that you just mentioned, I don't know if you can talk about much, but the challenge of running a design studio for social design that's trying to achieve good social impact and keeping it not just profitable, but survivable. I mean, I think I have a lot of students who want to do this kind of work. A lot of people want to do this kind of work, but then when it comes up against the challenges of how do I make it, viable?
Yeah,
What it's so unfortunate that viability gets in the way of humanity.
totally. Totally. It does. And I'm happy to talk about that. I'm happy to only talk about that. That is the thing. That's the thing that I think about all day, every day. So 100%. It is real. And I would say it is not a brick wall. It's like a little barrier. It's like there's some
Okay.
barricades here. There's some road bumps and some blocks, but it's not a brick wall. Um, you can get paid for good work. Um, I think we, in the beginning, were, nervous, like, well, what are we thinking? We're going to try to work with nonprofits. They, quote, have no money. And sure, one would argue like they don't have money. You could also argue that startups don't have money and that,
Right.
lots of people don't don't have money, but they still need things and they do have some money because they're getting something done. So it's
Right.
interesting. Actually, I was just looking at, we just did a feedback session with a group of nonprofit leaders who are sort of like past clients or potential clients, folks I've just been in relationship for many years with. And I was going on candid.com, which is where you can search, publicly available information on nonprofits and looking at all of their organizations' budgets because my
Right.
teammate was like, what are the sizes relatively of these different, because we had seven people on the call from different places in the country doing different things in housing and education and, youth development. And the budgets ranged from 450,000 a year to 100 million a year.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
so, not to say like we only work with the clients that have $100 million in revenue. Of course, they mostly are too big. They don't need our help. They can work with
Right.
McKinsey or, some of the largest consultancies. But we want to be able to serve the organizations that have $500,000 budget, $1 million budget, a $2 million budget. We don't need $1 million to do a project.
Right.
We might need, and I go into this more, but it's like depending on what the work is, we might need $10,000 or $20,000. Sometimes our projects are $100,000. That's a nice kind
Yeah.
of medium-sized project for us. And you cobble a bunch of those together and you have a business.
It reminds me a bit about when I was doing my PhD. I was working full time at United Way Community Services in metropolitan Detroit. And back then, United Way Community Services changed its name to United Way of Southeastern Michigan, I think. But it was basically the agency that was taking money in and then giving it out to member organizations. And I was working technically for a nonprofit, wearing a shirt and tie every day to work. And we were funding organizations that were highly complex and multi-layered and all the things you talk about. They were formal in all the ways that we might think about an organization. And then ones that were just these, ragtag, almost like startup models that were very niche, but providing important services. So when people think nonprofit, they might only think about those who have no money, but that there's a range of nonprofit type of organizations.
Yeah, for sure. And, some of our clients have a staff of two, and some of them have a staff of 200.
Right.
Probably an average client of ours has maybe a staff of like 20.
Right.
But, you know, like any organization, and I think the social sector gets discounted in many ways, like, oh, it's sort of not as sophisticated as, the business world. But I mean, absolutely, these are folks cobbling resources together And like any organization, they're going to have a strategy, they're going to have a mission, they're going to have a board of directors that's providing oversight and accountability, and they're going to need to create programs and deliver services and have communications materials and, all of the things that, make an org not only legitimate, but like able to, meet its mission. A lot of those things need to be designed. So, it's not like people are nobody's throwing money at me. We
Right.
work hard to frame projects that are exactly what they need and nothing more.
There's a sense that you just kind of talked about people might have where for-profit organizations are these bastions of rational thought with a very strategic approach that has been well thought out. And then I saw yesterday, Ford Motor Company CEO said, we're going to start listening to our customers. I'm like, well, so much for that notion that, these large corporations actually have their acts together and the nonprofits or the social sectors don't. Because, for anybody who's worked in not for-profit areas, that's not the case. That, they can be environments where nothing makes sense and nothing seems to work well. And you wonder who's running things because there seems to be no rational decision-making happening.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not like there aren't good people in all areas of our, for-profit, nonprofit, public, right, government. There's good people everywhere. There's also, sure, bad actors everywhere. But what the social sector has, I think more so than and my career for about 10 years prior to starting Greater Good was in corporate America, basically doing innovation consulting and, human-centered design. The social sector has good, smart people that also have a moral compass. They also have a purpose. And many of those people are, in many cases, whether they choose to or not, they are making less money probably than they could if they worked in a corporation, but they are getting their soul fed by the work that they're doing. And not to gloss it over, like they also need money because we still live in capitalism.
Right.
But I think working with nonprofits it's life-giving for me.
If I was going to back up, I was looking at your background. You said you worked in for-profit industries, but you have a mechanical engineering background?
I have a mechanical engineering degree.
Yeah, I mean, that's impressive to me because I took one mechanical drawing class, and I was in 7th grade. I'm 55, and it still stuck with me as how bad I was at it because I was epically bad.
I mean, that's pretty cool that you had that offered to you in 7th grade. I didn't really have anything like that until college. I went into mechanical engineering because I was good at math and science in high school.
Yeah.
And because I thought I wanted to make toys when I grew up. Like that was my idea. It was basically, if you've seen the movie Big with Tom Hanks, he's a kid in a man's body and he works in a toy company and he's a great designer because he knows what's fun. And I was like, that's me. I know what's fun. I will always know what's fun, even when I'm old.
Right.
I should design toys. And so mechanical engineering was sort of chosen, part by me, but part by my parents. I think the day I got to Northwestern and started in school, I was like, this was a huge mistake. But I stuck with it because I didn't think there was another option. And that idea of like having very extreme levels of persistence has always been part of my character. But what I've had to learn is when it's actually okay to quit something because it doesn't make sense, and to change direction, and that it's okay to change direction. And that I didn't know when I was 17 what mechanical engineering is going to be like. Now that I had new information, I should have sort of allowed myself to make another choice, but I stuck it out and just struggled through it.
Yeah, math and I was bad at both math and science. So right there, I actually ended up in sociology not by choosing what I wanted to do, but by recognizing what I was not capable of doing, and all that was left really It was like sociology and psychology. I'm like, well, everything else I crossed off. So what do I got left? Okay, this seems like something I might be able to do, because I mean, I come from Detroit, and that is engineering. You know, my brother was
Yeah.
an engineer, and I always thought, yeah, that would be cool. Mechanical drawing. Nope. It was just so precise. But at the same time, doing this podcast, I've been struck by how many engineers I get to meet who are now doing experience design work. It is
Oh, that's
really fascinating.
interesting.
It is really
Yeah.
fascinating.
Hmm.
And I don't know, everyone has their own stories, and I want to hear yours, but a lot of it has to do with, wanting to apply knowledge of systems towards something that affects some kind of positive outcome in ways that go beyond their traditional training.
Totally. I mean, for 3.5 years, it was just math devoid of context,
Oh dear.
devoid of humans. It was just
Right.
like, do this problem, figure out the fluids through this pipe. And you're like, why? But why? Why was
Right.
never a question that the teachers were interested in answering. Um, and then senior year, we had a course called, I think it was just called like design engineering or engineering design, something like that. And the professor had a client who was another professor at, like, I think the Rehabilitation Institute. And the client had a user, and the user had a need, which
Oh,
was he was working with stroke victims, and we had to design like a rehabilitative product, like an ergometer, to help people kind of strengthen one side of their body while they are recovering from a stroke.
right.
And I was like, just lit up from
Mm.
this, theoretical exercise. Like, there's people who need this thing that we're going to design. And it was like everything suddenly made sense. I was like, why haven't we been doing this all along?
Right.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say about engineering school is that what Northwestern loves to talk about is, no matter what you go into, our engineers learned how to solve problems. Like, it was just seen as this sort of universal problem solving, mindset and toolkit. Great, great. Sure, sure. The problem I learned to solve in undergrad was how to make friends with people so they would help me with my homework.
That's a huge skill, though.
It's a huge skill. I use it literally every day.
Right.
It was all about, like, how do I find the friends in this classroom? How do I, befriend the teacher as well? But it was really like, can I find allies who care about me for one reason or another, or just want to be in a community? And whether it's like laughing at the teacher or the struggle, or just drowning our sorrows, like, I made friends with folks who didn't just want to have their head in a book, but they wanted to be social. And it really got me through. I mean, I graduated with like a B. I think I had like a 3.0, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay,
Well,
I
3.0 at
learned so much
Northwestern.
but all my A's were in the non
Uh,
engineering classes. So I never got an A in a tech class, but like performance studies, psychology, sociology, anthropology, religion, music, art, theater. Like, I took all that stuff and got A. It's like the writing was on the wall. You think I could have like figured it out sooner?
so
But no.
the social engineer, right? Your
Mhm.
engineer student actually had a social side. That
Yeah, I mean,
intrigues a lot of people.
I always felt like an imposter in engineering school. And when I found design and went to design school, I felt like less of an imposter, but still very much an imposter. Like, I'm just totally making this all up. And then after a little while, it was like, oh, actually, I've learned some things. I think I do know some things. I'm good at some things.
Yeah, I like to find disciplines that are relatively new, because then everyone is making it up because there's no way established to do it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a downside to that, which is like, there isn't, for example, like a designer's like code of ethics.
Right.
There aren't certifications, and really
Right.
anyone can just, there's a very
True.
famous article called Practicing Without a License, where, it talks about design researchers going out and re-traumatizing community members because they haven't had to, sign a social work contract or
Right.
get licensed.
Right.
Um, but yes, on the side of, do we get to kind of make it up as we go? Do we get to make it better every day? I love that.
And so you went straight from there for your master's in design planning, right?
Yeah, that's what it was called. The
Huh.
way the school articulated it was using design methods to solve business problems.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I was entranced. I was like, this is what I'm good at. This is what I love. Let's do this forever. And did it for about 7 years.
Wow. I mean, it's interesting. It's not that dissimilar from me in that I ended up teaching classes with UX professionals, not having a clue one what user experience was. I was just
Hmm.
like, sure, I'll figure it out, and then just kind of hacked my way through. But it was the key thing I found was that it wasn't, they didn't need someone who was one of them. There are already plenty of those around. They needed somebody who was something else, who was
Yeah,
bringing something unique in.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that that is a theme in our work as well. Not always. It doesn't. The pitch sometimes backfires, but for example, often, an educational nonprofit, someone who works in K-12 education will say, well, have you worked in education before? What do you know about education? Are you an education expert? And
Right,
we often are like, no, we're not education experts. We've worked in education. We can
right.
share with you, 6 case studies, but we're never going to claim to be content experts in what our clients do. um, we are going to claim to be process experts in a process that they don't do.
And I think that's hugely important if people are willing to trust the process because you're bringing different insights and not a taking for granted acceptance of the routine or the norms or the way things are that you're bringing. Hopefully, they're paying you to bring fresh eyes in. I mean, if you want to replicate what you're already doing, but just change it a bit, bring in an education expert. But if you want to rethink it, bring
Yeah,
someone from the outside.
exactly, exactly. So sometimes, like I said, sometimes it doesn't work, and they're like, "Nope, we want an expert," and we're like, "Then that is who you shall have."
But I do wonder, and I don't. Maybe it happens. Can to what extent can we transform processes, systems, environments, interactions when we are relying on the same type of expertise that's already embedded in that context?
I think the assumption inherent in your question is that we want to transform a system. I don't
Sometimes,
know that our
yeah.
clients are often in that place.
Okay, let's go back there. I mean, that's a good point. That when you're interacting with clients, what are generally the needs, or if there's not needs, then what are they trying to accomplish through engaging in this kind of design process?
Mhm. So, yeah, all kinds of things. I'll give you a very small example right now. Working on a project for a nonprofit here in Chicago that has a maternal and infant mortality maternal and child health program.
Okay.
And the way that people find out about that program is typically through their doctor, and doctors are not referring people to the program as much as they would like.
Interesting.
So they want basically marketing materials so that people can find it themselves and self enroll in the program. And so this is a tiny project, it's like a couple weeks. We're going to have one conversation with the people who run the program to try and understand, like, what is the program actually like? What's it all about? Why do people come? Why do people stay? And then through that, design different, like there'll probably be postcards.
Right.
This is what this program is, and speaking to moms, because everything we've ever seen on this program online is speaking to funders. It's not
Okay.
speaking to the moms.
Why do you think, and I don't want you to out the people, I don't want to judge them negatively who run the program, but I wonder why we have this blind spot, and I'd say we collectively have this blind spot about when we're trying to direct a message to particular audiences, we tend to, rather than doing that, direct the message to those who might be the most powerful stakeholders. You know what I mean? Like with the funder example that, yeah, where it makes sense to the funders or it makes sense to the legal authorities if it's a medication, right? We're
Right.
writing to the regulations, we're not writing to the people who are actually being impacted directly.
Yeah, I mean, what you're touching on is essentially the way that our society is oriented towards power.
Right.
I heard something recently that's just been really sticking with me, and I'm going to get it wrong, and I don't know who said it, but it was like, in a patriarchal society, everything orients toward power,
Mm,
and in a matriarchal society, everything orients toward care.
okay.
And it was just an interesting, I hadn't really thought about things in that way before. Um, you know, Maybe just a critique of the patriarchy here.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
also, all of us do it. It's not, doesn't mean we're terrible humans, but like, you know, if I'm a middle child and I want to convince my family to go to Disney World, do I work on my older brother or my younger brother? Like, clearly, I
Mm-hmm.
work on my older brother. He has
Right.
the most sway with mom and dad. You know
Right.
what I mean? It makes total sense. But in the social sector, that's often either government or
Right.
foundations, philanthropy, because that's who's paying for it. That's, the program doesn't exist if it's not for them. And so often what we're trying to do is not combat that and say, stop doing that, but to say also, actually, the people who matter, maybe not the most, but a lot more than you're giving credit to,
Right.
are the people who are actually receiving the services. They know what the problems are. They will decide if the solutions are effective or not. They will actually make or break your program. They should be, part of the design process. They should be part of the solution. And so we try to bring, I don't know if I said this to you, but this is sort of how I've been thinking about human-centered design lately, is bridging the gap between the people making decisions and the people impacted by those
Mm-hmm.
decisions, just trying to bring those two groups closer together.
It also makes me think about there's power in politics in every design process, no matter where it's taken place. If it's in a for-profit organization or if it's, in an educational setting, and especially in a social setting like you're doing, like delivering social services or social impact and things like that, but they can manifest themselves very differently and be, I won't say more deeply held and felt, but the repercussions of it can be more significant and intense, I would say, because you're dealing with power and politics that are embedded in longer histories, right, of people and communities and systems and treatment and experiences than just this one project.
Totally. I mean, I think something that is challenging about the social sector is that those power relationships are often implicit rather than explicit. Like, you have, for example, in a corporation, an org chart, and you know who the
Mm-hmm.
boss is, you know who the boss's boss is, and you know who the boss, like there's a clear hierarchy. And so this person can tell this person what to do, and they basically have to do it, right? They have power over. A lot of our clients are these more flat organizations who also are, needing to engage and stay on top of and understand the needs of many stakeholders, volunteers, staff, board,
Mm-hmm.
funders, etc. And they don't have power over those folks. It's not a transactional relationship. It's not like they can just tell someone else what to do and they have to do it. So it has to be more relational and it has to be more implicit. Um, and I think that is just sometimes difficult to navigate if you don't kind of understand what's going on. And not like we always know what's going on, but we try to understand the dynamics in any client community.
Well, which goes back to, the skill set you developed in your engineering program, which was making friends to try to build relationships to accomplish some goal or task, right? Because if you're approaching this as a pure quote unquote engineering problem of, how much water can a pipe carry, you're going to miss the people who are using the plumbing,
Right.
or how old the
Exactly.
house is, or, I even think about Flint, Michigan, and that whole, for extending the metaphor even further, the
Mm.
fact that it was just an engineering cost problem of like, oh, we'll just get the water from the river, right? because it's cheaper and easier rather than pumping it from down from Detroit.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, and at the end of the day, decisions were made by some people, right, who
Right.
probably weren't super connected
Right.
with the ones who were going to be impacted by those decisions.
Absolutely. And then when those people complained, then it was like, right. And so, without the going into the legality of what happened around that situation, it does reflect the larger systemic issues that were historic at play, and it wasn't just a matter of let's just switch a valve and change where we're getting it from. That to really get at the root cause of the problem, there are these large historical forces, but at the same time, at least in the work you do, there's a bounded period of time and how long you have to do the project and what the deliverable is. So you can't necessarily take on the legacy of systemic discrimination or whatever problem it resulted in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is I talked earlier about a brick wall, and I don't think funding is a brick wall. I think, systemic racism and other forms of oppression are kind of like a brick ceiling, if anything. Like
Right.
I have this feeling of like I just keep
Right.
hitting my head against that wall. Um, we can do a lot down here, but until we can actually break through that wall, it feels really hard to change anything um, at the scale I would like.
It,
Um,
al- it almost makes me
yeah,
think of this image where, ever see like those movies where a person's stuck underground and the water's rising and there's a little
yeah,
gap where they can breathe. It's like, well, what if we make the water warmer? I'm like, well, yeah, sure, that might help, but it
yeah.
would be really helpful if you just took the top off so I could escape,
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that is sort of how it feels. I don't think that that is to say that our work is not impactful. Um, but I mean, racism is so embedded, right, in like
Right.
every system, every institution, that it is and then people freak out, right? So you can't just be like, well, I have an idea. Like, I'll give you an example. We did a project a few years ago with a housing authority, who said, and this was in the wake of 2020, they were sort of like, oh, we should be more woke, and we should acknowledge race, and maybe specifically look at how we as the state housing finance authority could increase home ownership for Black and Brown families in our state.
Hmm.
And, they were like African American and Latino, but like,
Right.
this is like a big sort of quasi governmental agency. Appointed, the head is appointed by the governor of the state. Like it's a large institution, and they aligned on that direction. But we had to be very like delicate when we talked about it, even in 2021, because, for example, I remember, so we did a brainstorm, right? This is many months into the project. So we did research with, Black and Latinx homeowners and home buyers and retail, realtors and housing counselors and lenders and all kinds of folks, to sort of understand that landscape. And then we got to the point where we were like, okay, there's all the challenges. We've articulated the problems, and many of them were, beyond the client's control, but still,
Right.
we wanted to hear. And we had hundreds of ideas, and then we kind of narrowed those down, and we were like, okay, there's like 50 ideas that could be in their control, to do. And then we started to kind of like prototype those and evaluate and narrow until we had like 4 concepts. And they actually went forward with at least 2 of them, which is amazing. And I'm super excited. And they're
Hmm.
in the field, they're working, they're actually giving
Great.
out mortgages. But one concept that I remember, because we did an internal review and the client team got to kind of like nix any that they were like, no, we're not going to do this. And one of the concepts was so simple. It was called an apology.
Mm,
It was just, you could just give an apology. You could say, we're sorry that for so many years we participated in redlining, right?
right.
Like we were part of the problem that led to segregation and disinvestment and a lack of generational wealth. Like they
Mm.
could just have said, we're sorry. And
Yeah,
we
yeah,
were like,
yeah.
this is the easiest, like in the, how you sometimes do like impact
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and feasibility. We
Right,
were
right,
like, this
right.
is so feasible and so high impact. And they were like, no, we're not doing that. So that
Oh,
was
wow.
like that felt like one of those brick walls, where I was
Right,
like, come on, like we're so close. You've done so much to get this far. Now, like I said, they ended up developing and launching initiatives that are incredible. They have a first mortgage product that uses, to get into technical terms for a sec, a blend of automated and manual underwriting, which basically means that we're not just letting the computer decide who
right.
gets a mortgage, we're also bringing a human back because it used to be all humans, but they're racist. Then we went to all computers, but they're also racist. So if we
Right.
have both, because they're programmed by humans,
Right.
but if we do both and basically consider more of the context around why someone is or isn't qualified for a mortgage, like
Right.
I lent my brother money for his car and then the car got
Right.
totaled. And so now I'm showing as having this outstanding debt. Like I pay my bills on time. I can qualify for a mortgage. Um,
Right.
and the loans are in the market, they're performing, people are paying them back, they're not defaulting. Like it's amazing. And I said, are you tracking the racial data of the borrowers? And they said, no, we can't do that.
Huh. Interesting. I mean, that's a fascinating project because there's so much going on around the history of, like I said, redlining and the history of lending and the history of neighborhoods and the history of urbanization and gentrification. And like you said, just, yeah, how about, I'm sorry. Nah.
It was an idea that was generated by one of our participants. Like, and people
Yeah.
were like, oh yeah, great idea. I mean, it was one of 100, it
Right.
wasn't like it was this big, like
Right.
community push. It was just like, what if we did this? Like, this would be pretty easy. Doesn't cost you anything.
Well, it reminds me of like truth and reconciliation programs, honestly. Not that I've looked into great detail in these things, but that, an honesty is required in anything to make a full accounting of failures, whether intentional or unintentional, right?
Yeah.
And that until you can make a full accounting of failures, it's hard to be in a position to move forward, not only in accounting, but a fixing. And whether it be redlining in lending and lack of ownership and generational wealth, or whether it be people not being honest about a project that failed in an organization. you know, Either one limits the ability to engage in an honest, thoughtful discussion and then establish a ground to move forward.
Yeah. 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 I mean, when I was in design school, I never thought in a million years that I would be presenting concepts like an apology.
Yeah,
I'm proud that I presented it. I'm bummed that the client, dismissed it out of hand. But if we had to dismiss that one to get this first mortgage product in the world, I'm good. You know what I mean? Um,
yeah.
and then the other one was financial counseling, including home buying, because right now in their state, financial counseling didn't really touch home ownership. So they were like, well,
Yeah.
that's easy. Like, let's make a module and partner with a bunch of educational organizations that do financial literacy training and give them a module on home ownership because it's a huge part of building wealth.
I actually did a project like that once with a individual real estate agent building a housing literacy educational product for
Hmm.
prospective home buyers to do. And it was interesting because the issue being that a knowledge of home ownership processes from simple to complex just often gets passed down, right? I
Oh my
mean,
God. Yeah.
generationally,
Yeah.
because your parents owned a house and their parents owned a house, and you just kind of through osmosis develop this awareness. But that's one of those examples of the blinders, right? It's like, well, everyone
Yeah.
knows this. No, they don't.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. That sounds like a great project.
Well, yeah, I don't know one of those. You might recognize this, but you don't know what happens after you deliver it.
Often you don't. We're pretty intense about that, at least following up, because we do really want to know. Like we
Right.
want to stay in touch and we want to hear
Right.
what happens. And in many cases, I think our work is implemented in part because, and this is kind of the flip side of working with lower budget clients, they can't afford not to implement. They
True.
can't afford to pay for this and then have it sit on a shelf. Like that's what
True.
corporations do. And that's why I
Right.
left corporate consulting because I saw my work sitting on a shelf and I was like, screw that.
It's so true. It's like, I mean, you paid me. Are you using it?
Mhm.
You never hear. But one of the things I wanted to ask about is where is this notion of pissed off optimist comes from? When you talk
Yeah.
about, how you and your co-founder describe yourselves as pissed off optimists, which I love, but I'm not quite sure I understand. It sounds awesome. But what does it mean?
Awesome.
It does sound
Um,
awesome.
yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, no, it's it's awesome. It's how we started out describing ourselves. I think it was not in the very beginning, but as soon as we started realizing we needed to hire, like that it was going to be more than just the two of us, we were like, well, who are we looking for? Like, how would we describe the people that we want to work at Greater Good Studio? And we were like, well, they have to be pissed off because
Right.
if they're not pissed off, they're not paying attention. The
Right.
world is deeply, deeply unjust. And,
Right.
this is 2011. Like at the time, we were just like, we see some bullshit. Like we just see
Right.
some things in the world that are like really ridiculous and unfair. But like obviously, things it feels have just sort of amped up their ridiculousness in the last 15 years. But we were like, they have to be, because a lot of folks go to design school with this sort of like stars in their eyes, like, I'm going to make everything beautiful. And we're like,
Right.
you can't just think that things are rosy. Like, you need to stay aware of what's up. And you can't let yourself succumb to despair either.
Right.
Because if you're pissed off all the time and you're just fuming and in Eeyore about it, you're probably also not a designer. Like I think designers have an irrational amount of optimism.
Yeah, you're definitely not a designer. You would be called a sociologist.
Okay.
That's what those people are called, who are just pissed
Yeah.
off about things and very pessimistic. So a pissed off
Yeah.
pessimist would be a sociologist organization.
Okay. Yeah. And like a happy optimist would just be like a fashion designer. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, let's make cooler things cooler. Or like an app designer for like Gen
Right.
Z, nail salon finders and,
Right.
stupid, sort of the stupid startups.
Yeah.
Um, I think we kind of find ourselves sitting at that nexus of like, we are angry about inequity and we have some confidence in our ability to make a dent in it, in the ability of our clients to make a dent in it. Like we have hope in ourselves and in others and in community. And so that, at first we were like, it's just us. And then we were like, wait, our clients are also pissed off optimists. And more recently, we've realized that there's like a whole world of pissed off optimists out there. It's not the whole world, but there's a lot of people in design and government, artists and organizers who I think resonate with that concept. And so we've been trying to do more sort of community events for them.
Well, I think it's a matter of directing that anger in a way that is more broadly productive and not
Yeah.
destructive, because there's a whole lot of pissed off people out there and a whole lot of people who are taking action in ways that they think make sense to address the things that make them angry with not great consequences or outcomes. So it's how do you take this anger over the state of things with an understanding of the causality behind it to then do the next step, which is do something about it in small and large ways to make it better.
Yeah, exactly. It's anger is incredible fuel. It's incredible fuel and it can destroy you
Right.
if you let it. And it can destroy others if you let it. And so how do you take that anger, see it, recognize it, don't ignore it, but use it as that fuel to say, this is why I'm motivated. This is why I'm going to, in our case, come to work every day, but also work through those barriers and hurdles, whether it's like, oh, the client doesn't have enough money, or like, damn, this, client is working in a racist system. It's like we persist because we love it, because we find joy in it and we find hope in it.
Yeah, that's the choice, right? If knowing something's wrong and not persisting is, well, what's the other option? If you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to try to do something about it, do you, if you have the privilege, disengage completely from it and just try to forget about it? Do you end up doing self-destructive behaviors because the weight of it is intolerable, knowing that nothing can be done about it? What do you do with this if not try to change it positively?
Yeah.
I'm not sure there are many positive choices out there in terms of what you do with that anger, other than the kind of work that you're doing. And I know that you, if I remember correctly, are keeping like a database of other similar organizations, which I find fascinating. So, like, kind of like roughly how many other types of social design organizations have you come across?
I don't know. I will look real quickly.
So more than like five.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, hundreds,
Yeah, that's what, that's,
over
is it,
300. Yeah. In
wow.
the database.
And do you all get together? Is there an organization? Are there ways of connecting? Because
We
that's
would
pretty
love
cool.
that. Yeah, we would love that. I think we haven't been able to like truly rationalize that yet. It would be a lot of money and time.
That you don't
I
already
would
have.
love to get together. Yeah. I mean, we did host a conference last year for pissed off optimists, and it was
Okay.
amazing. There were a lot of, social designers there.
Was that in
But
Chicago?
it was in Chicago. Yeah. I can't say that I am in touch with everyone in the database, but certainly a lot of them.
And
Yeah.
so what was this event like when everyone got together being pissed off but optimistic?
It was called the Livid Conference.
Okay.
Because now we're really angry. No, yeah, it was so cathartic. It was beautiful. It was the event that I wanted to go to. All year, I've been to various conferences, local and national, where someone would say something like, "And in these tough times," and then they would just continue on with their regularly scheduled programming, and I was like, are you kidding? Like, what do you, that's all you're going to say to acknowledge the moment? Like, the moment is off the wall. This is terrible. Like, we can't just be like in these troubled times. And
Right.
so we had, an incredible keynote. We had a couple panels. We had, social designers, and then we had kind of nonprofit and philanthropic leaders. And then we had workshops and rapid talks. I mean, it was a 1 day session, but it was so beautiful. There were moments of like, I mean, there were tears. We had a big wall that was like, what are you pissed off about? What are you optimistic about? Like, people put up their stuff. There was sort of like notes going up throughout the day. The kind of idea was, how do we design a new social contract? Like, what is
Mm,
our vision for what we want to see? Because
okay.
sure, we don't want to see ice on our streets. Like, sure, we know what we don't want to see. There's a lot of examples of what we don't want to see, but what do we want to see? What is that? What is that future vision of a society? And so it was, yeah, it was really, I miss it. We're going to do it again in just over a year, probably spring of 2027,
Okay.
because it was a lot of work and I don't think we could do it again right away.
It sounds like a lot of work, but it sounds amazing. And I just, as you're talking, it's so funny because I reflect on everything I learned as a sociologist in my classes, which is about the system, right? And everything that's wrong with the system. But then you leave out of that kind of education going, all right, now what? There's not that next piece. I mean, to be fair, in my PhD program at Wayne State University in Detroit, we actually did have applied in clinical sociology courses that was so what's to be done kind of step. Okay, you can actually do
Mhm.
stuff with this, which is why I do the work I do now. But most sociologists I know are just, you study the thing, you know about it, you can chapter and verse the history of it. But in terms of what do you do with it, not much other than publish academic papers and talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and there's a place for that. Um, that is not the place that we spend our time. But I
Right.
have great respect for people who are doing research and publishing it because it moves our collective knowledge forward.
For sure.
We just have a
But
different model. We're like, what are we doing? What is the thing? We're just so action oriented. Like that was just beaten into me in grad school.
and I wish that we had action oriented beaten into us in a bit more, other than like down with the system, which is fine as a slogan, but in terms of practical steps and operationalize that, it's like, well, all right, when's the revolution happening? Because I got to clear my calendar for that day. Is this,
Yeah.
how should I block in? Was this like, an all day thing to bring down the system? And I think that part of me, as I'm joking about that, is the danger of trying to do too much and not keeping the goals kind of manageable and realistic, right? As a
Yeah.
pissed off optimist, there's like, optimistically, we can do all of this, but realistically, what are we actually able to accomplish, and what are the metrics we're using this to see that we were quote unquote successful?
Yeah. Yeah. These are all things that we care about. Yeah.
And how do you manage that, like with the optimistically what we would like to achieve and realistically what we are capable of achieving?
Yeah, I think it's about planting seeds. So, in the case of the project I told you about, and just in time to go to jump right soon. Um, but in the case of the project that I told you about around, marketing materials for this mother and baby program, um, it's a very limited budget for like a very specific scope. And,
Right.
we start looking at their website and we're like, oh man, the website is so confusing. If we could only just make this website more clear, that would help so much. And then we go to the sign up form and the sign up form is even worse. And we're like, oh my God, we just need to fix the site. And then we're like, but what about the actual program itself? Like we want to change. We, of course, right. We just want to redesign it all. And we can't because they don't have the money. And so we don't have the time.
Right.
But we can tell them what that project would look like.
Yeah.
We can tell them what that project might cost. We can write up a proposal for that project so they can share it with their funders.
Yeah.
And we can hang out and wait. We can be patient
Right.
because we can't get everything done at once. And we're limited by our clients. But our clients don't have to be limited by what they are doing today. And sometimes we can give them that push of like, oh, what if we did do, we often are like pitching our own projects. Like this is what the project should be,
Right.
kind of giving them that idea of like, oh, so I think it's, a little bit of inspiration and persistence.
I love that. Well, Sara, thank you so much for talking about Greater Good Studios and being a pissed off optimist and trying to, bring some of that passion to the world in ways that actually have a social impact. It's pretty amazing.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be with you. Thanks for the great conversation.
All right, stop recording. I want to thank Sara Cantor for joining me to talk about inclusive design, the world of social services and nonprofits, activism, and being a pissed off optimist. You can find out more about her work in Greater Good Studio in the links in the show notes. And make sure you share your feedback about this episode or any episode at feedback@experiencexdesign.com. Love to hear your thoughts and love to hear your show ideas. If you got them, send them over to me. I will take a look and very carefully consider them. If you want to subscribe and stay on top of all the EXD news, and there's going to be plenty of news to stay on top of, trust me on that one, go over to experiencexdesign.com and provide your email. And I'll make sure to inform you of all the recent updates, which includes, by the way, we're back on YouTube. We got canceled from YouTube before. I don't know why. They didn't tell me. But we're back on YouTube. So if you enjoy Experience by Design, but you like listening to podcasts on YouTube, you can now do that over on YouTube. Isn't that great news? I thought you'd like it. Also, with all of that great excitement, it's a great time to buy me a coffee. Over at the experiencexdesign.com website, you can help defray the cost of this podcast and show your support for this content. Another way to show your support is by hiring me. You can use me, please use me, by or for your corporate events, your professional developments, your trainings, or any other kind of keynote work. I'm good at all of it. Trust me. Just ask around. They'll tell you. Everyone knows. They're talking about it. You can also check out my speaking profile at garyconnects.com. Choose from a range of topics, such as creating workplace communities, employee-centric cultures, achieving belonging in your organizations, how to use qualitative data, developing a data strategy, and the unwow, which is the big news coming up. The unwow. So unleash your unwow in your organization today. Shoot me a message at garyconnects.com or DM me through LinkedIn. And with that, as always, be safe, be kind, be well, and be here for the next experience by design. Bye.